Out. I guess there's a big football game tonight, but honestly, there's a lot more people than I thought would be here, so I do appreciate that. Uh, I want to thank Pastor for these opportunities that he's given me. It's exciting and nerve-wracking and humbling all at the same time to know that he feels comfortable coming to me to be able to fill the pulpit when needed. I've had it pretty easy so far because he hasn't been here. Every sermon I've given, he hasn't been here. So it's kind of nerve-wracking. It's kind of like throwing footballs in front of Aaron Rodgers right now. I don't know. So we'll see how this works out. Yeah, Bart Star, there you go. So we'll see how this all works out tonight. But thank you all for coming out. And I was actually a little nervous giving the sermon tonight because I was hoping to continue in the book of James where I've been going through, but the only way that I could really cut the sermon down was to do the first 6 verses. And I didn't know if I would be able to have enough material to cover only 6 verses. And I didn't want to rush through all 20 verses in chapter 5, book of James. And that's where we're going to start tonight is James chapter 5. And I should tell you also be warned that if I get a little excited tonight or I start talking with a southern drawl, it's because I've been watching a lot of Billy Graham online. And I've really enjoyed that, but I'm hoping that doesn't come out, so we'll see what happens. But the first 6 verses in James chapter 5 is James' final warning to the rich and the wicked. So far in the book of James, he's been directing everything that he's been talking about to believers. He usually always references brothers and sisters and all that. For the first 6 verses, he's not referencing them necessarily. He's actually talking to the unsaved wicked at the time. And this is his message to them is, at the same time, he's hoping that Christians will take something away from it as well. It's actually a message to both, but he's directly talking to them. So far in the book of James, we've covered everything from controlling your tongue to looking to God to wisdom and not earthly wisdom. Talking about enduring tests and trials. And now we're going to be talking about warnings to the rich and putting your faith in possessions and your faith in material things other than God. So I'm going to start chapter 5, verse 1. It says, Go to now, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. Your riches are corrupted, your garments are moth-eaten, your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire. Ye have been heaped with treasure together for the last days. Behold, the hire of your laborers who have reaped down your fields, which you have kept back by fraud, crieth, and the cries of them which have been reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of the Sabbath. Ye have lived in pleasures on this earth, and have been wanton. Ye have nourished your hearts, and as a day in slaughter, ye have condemned and killed the just, and he doth not resist you. Let's pray. Lord, I want to thank you for this opportunity to be able to preach your word. I pray that you will continue to bless this church and bless everybody here tonight. I pray that you'll use me as a vessel. Just use me, have your message speak through me, calm my nerves, and continue, just use me as a vessel tonight and let everyone's hearts hear what you want said. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. So like I said, the first 6 verses of this chapter are talking to the wicked rich at the time. If you really want to see what somebody's all about, you want to see where their heart is, because only God knows where someone's heart really is. You can take a look at their bank accounts, but if you can't, better yet, if you really want to know if somebody in your family is demon possessed, get them around a lawyer and an inheritance. I've heard a lot of horrible stories of when money and land and all this stuff is involved with an inheritance. People get pretty nasty because of greed and that want for this earthly desires. Luckily for me, my family's been pretty poor, so we haven't really had those issues that I know of. But I wanted to start tonight actually in Luke chapter 12. I'm going to start with the parable of the rich fool. And it says, starting in verse 13, "And one of his company said unto him, Master, speak to my brother, that he divideth the inheritance with me. And he said unto him, Man, who made me judge and divider over you? And he said unto them, Take heed, beware of covetousness, for a man's life consists not of an abundance of things which he possesseth. The way the world works, the way the world thinks is that we need to gain as much as we possibly can. There's a lot of people that I know that are doing everything they can, working as much as they can to get as many toys and possessions that they possibly can. Money, don't think for 1 minute that money will ever buy you happiness. Don't think that money will ever buy anything that you need. I know that the way that I've explained it to people after giving my life to Christ was, money and material possessions, they can buy you a lot of things. They can buy you a lot of comforts in life. Money can buy you sleep, but it can't buy you rest. You go to the drugstore, you can get sleeping pills, but you can't get, you'll never get rest until you really come to Christ. I know after I gave my life to Christ, what I tell people is that I was overwhelmed with a lot of peace. I had a lot of peace. And it was weird because when I asked Jesus to save me, I guess the way I felt was a lot different than other people. A lot of people, I have a friend whose daughter had just gotten saved before she went off to college. And, she was saying things like how excited she was. Her heart was just filled with all this joy. She was so excited. She literally said things like, food tastes better, water's wetter. I don't know how that's possible. But it was just all this, and it got me thinking. I was like, why did none of that really happen for me? And I think it's because in a lot of cases, when you give your life to Christ, you're given exactly what you need. And I didn't need food to taste better, obviously. I didn't need to feel any of those things. What I needed was the internal struggle that I had, and I needed peace in my life. And that's exactly what I got when I gave my life to Christ. The internal struggles were gone. The anger that I felt was gone. The betrayal that I felt was gone. Everything that I felt was really gone. But money will never buy you happiness. The only thing that's ever going to bring you true happiness in life is Christ. And that's something I've been trying to tell as many people as I can, anyone that'll listen. And there's a couple at work that I inadvertently kind of wove into my sermon tonight because, their life is really, as I was studying this and I was reading commentaries on it and I was trying to figure out exactly what I was going to say, a lot of the stuff that they've been telling me lines up a lot with this. And I remember they work an opposite shift to me, but I see them all the time because they're working so much overtime. They're working as much as they can because they have a lot of toys and a lot of things to pay for. And I remember the husband asked me, we were talking, we're friends, and he's like, Joe, why do I just love money so much? And I was like, I can't tell you. I don't know. I'm like, honestly, I said, I want to tell you that you can't serve two masters because you're going to love one and hate the other. I said, but honestly, the way we've been that you talk, you're not even trying to serve one or two men. You're just serving the one master. You're serving material possession. You're serving money. And I said, you can. And as I talked to him, he didn't care at all. He didn't want to talk about church. He didn't want to talk about Christ. He didn't want to talk about any of that. He just wanted money. He said, I got a lot of stuff to pay for. I got a lot of stuff that I want. I got stuff that's going to make me happy. So that's why I got to pay for it. And coincidentally, a lot of the stuff that makes him happy takes a lot of upkeep. And as I talked, and then as I would work with her, his wife, she would tell me a lot of things like, it should be Christmas shopping. And this was a year I was able to get a big present for our older kids. It was on sale. I was super excited. And it was nothing in compared to what they were shopping for. And she literally told me that one kid was going to get an Xbox, and her other child was going to get a Nintendo Switch. And they were going to be brand new. And that was just one of their many presents that they were going to get. And this is why she has to work all the time and work all this overtime. Because they're putting everything that they have into material possessions. Putting everything they have into money. And I couldn't help but think about them as I was reading through these 6 verses. I was reading through the scriptures. But I don't want you to think for 1 minute that having money, having material possessions, any of that is a sin, or if any of that is wrong. It's not. It's not a sin to be rich. It's not a sin to have material possessions. If you just think about it, Abraham, Joseph, second to Pharaoh, Job, King David, his son Solomon, they were all rich. New Testament, Philemon, Joseph of Arimathea, Lydia, they were all rich. God blesses us all in different ways. And he's going to bless a lot of us with money, and some of us he's not going to bless with money. But don't think for 1 minute that it's wrong to be rich, because it's absolutely not. The one verse that's always misquoted to me is 1 Timothy 6:10. It says, for the love of money is the root of all evil. And people tell me this all the time. Money is the root of all evil. And my favorite one is, if money is the root of all evil, why do they ask for money at churches? I'm like, because you're getting the verse wrong, to be honest with you. If it's for the love of money, the constant pursuit of money, money can buy a lot of things for you. Money can give you a very comfortable life, as I said before, but it can't give you salvation. And if all you're worried about is the short time that you're going to spend on this earth and the material possessions that you can bank up here instead of everything that you can bank up in heaven, you're going to have a very, very bad time after you pass on, because you can't take any of it with you. And it's funny because I'd heard a joke a while back, and somebody had asked me, told me, they're like, I don't know why people are working so much. Like, it's not like you can't take it with you. You never see a U-Haul behind a hearse. So you're not going to take anything with you, so I don't understand why people are banking so much up. And I'm like, yeah, I completely agreed with that. And it wasn't until last night, Shannon and I were watching a movie together, and the same exact phrase was used in the movie that we were watching. So I thought I should just include that tonight. But I'm going to start off in verse 1. It says, go now, ye rich men, weep and howl for miseries that shall come upon you. James says, go now. He means listen up and listen to me. He's not telling them to go anywhere. He wants them to listen. He wants them to pay attention. He's talking to these wealthy unbelievers that are wicked, and we're going to see how wicked they are as we continue. There's no repentance asked from them, and they're not called brethren, so we know that they're all unsaved. And he's talking about the miseries that shall come upon you and will come upon you. He is saying there is a guarantee that it's going to happen. And the fact that they are putting all their trust into their material possessions and to their money is what he's warning them about. You know, And he's trying to tell them that there's only one thing that's going to save them, and that's Christ. And it's not going to be the money and the material possessions that they're banking up. There's actually 4 condemnations. He condemns them 4 times in these passages toward the rich. And the first one, he warns them of their hoarding, as we'll see in verse 2 and verse 3. It says, your riches are corrupted, your garments are moth-eaten, your gold and silver is cankered, and rust, and the rust of them will be witnesses against you, and they shall eat your flesh as fire. Ye have heaped treasure together for the last days. Everything that he's telling them, everything that they have, everything that they've stockpiled, everything that they've got, will witness against them in the last days. God blesses us all different. And he does bless some of us with a lot. And it depends how you use it. And that really tells not only everyone what's actually in your heart, but will or will not witness against you when you go up for judgment. I was reading a commentary on this, and there was a phrase that I really liked, and it said, with everything that God has given you, everything God has blessed you with, are you a conduit of your wealth, or are you a reservoir? And if you're a conduit, you're wanting to use your wealth to further God's kingdom, to help those in need, and to try to live your life as the way that Christ did. If you're a reservoir, you're just holding everything back. You're gaining up material possessions. You're piling everything up. And that was something that really made me think. Really made me think of what do I do? You know, with everything that God has given me on loan, because everything belongs to Him, and what He has blessed me with. What do I do? And the book of James has really convicted me as I've gone through it. And we need to be doers of the word, not just hearers of the word. James teaches us that early. And I thought about that, and I thought about all the people that I see at intersections asking for money. Whether or not they actually need it, that should really make no difference to me. And I know I've driven by them many, many times. And then one day I looked in the back seat and I saw Maddie, Andrew, and Leah. And I thought, what do they think when I just drive by? What do they think when I just drive by these people? I barely look at them. I can't look at them, because if I look at them, they're gonna want something. So if I'm telling them that they need to do good things, then they need to help people, then what am I teaching them by me not doing anything? So last year I took it upon myself to make sure that I have, whether it's a few dollars or something, I have a few dollars in a Bible tract, and every opportunity that I give them a few dollars, and I give them a tract. And I thought that they were just playing on their tablets in the back seat, but they actually have seen me, and they've asked questions. They've asked why I stop. I know one person we saw at the mall, and I actually had to park, get out, and go hand this woman in a wheelchair a tract and a few dollars. And they asked why was I doing it, and I told them because as Christians we need to do the same thing that we hear every Sunday, and we need to live as Christ would live. How would He have lived? Would He ignore those people, or would He do something? So I took it upon myself to make sure that I always have a tract, I always have a few dollars, just so I can at least hand it to them, so I know it in my heart I'm doing what I can do for them. And it's not something that I'm not sitting up here to brag about it or anything like that, but I'm trying to do exactly what I'm learning every single Sunday when I come in here. But if you are just banking up material possessions and money in this world, everything that you do, everything that you have is going to be a witness against you. And it's going to be a witness when you get up there and be judged, because we all are going to be judged. And as Linda has told me before, we're all going to be judged, but we have to do our best to keep our accounts short. I've never forgotten that when she told me that. But so James warns these people about hoarding for themselves. And whether or not a lot of people around here have riches, I cannot believe the amount of storage units that we have for all of our junk. It seems like every time something new is going up, at least in Toma and Sparta, it's another set of storage units, so we can just store more and more things. It's just an observation that I made. I couldn't believe it when I'd seen something else going up, and it was more storage units the other day. I just couldn't believe it. But in that time, wealth was found in 4 different categories. There was land, your food storage, your clothes, and the gold and silver that you had. And when James says that their riches are corrupted, he's talking about all their food store, and their food store is going to rot. Their garments are all going to be moth-eaten, which coincidentally, when I read that, I was thinking, I have never had a piece of clothing be eaten by a moth. I don't think I ever have. I've known of mothballs my whole life. Did not know what they were for. I don't know. I'm a sweatshirt kind of guy, so if they eat sweaters and all, I'm not a sweater guy, so I have no idea. But he warns us that our riches are all going to be corrupted. Our garments are all going to be moth-eaten. And gold and silver, it doesn't rust, but it does tarnish. And everything is going to witness against us. Job 1, chapter 1, verse 21 says, "And naked I came out of my mother's womb, and naked I shall return." We bring nothing into this world, and we're not taking anything as we leave. So make sure that you're doing everything that you possibly can to help others. That's exactly what James is telling us here tonight. And I know I have gotten a picture a few times that says, doesn't matter who you are and what you have, our burial plots are all the same size. And it is true. But the person that sent it to me, I know, is a socialist and doesn't have a job. So then I might have messaged back, I'm buying 2 just to prove you're wrong. But it doesn't matter. Our burial plots are all going to be the same size. And when we come in and when we leave this world, we don't bring nothing in and we're not taking anything out. It's crazy how much James has gotten from his older brother Jesus, because in Matthew chapter 6 verses 19 to 21 it says, "Lay not for your treasures upon earth, where moth and rust corrupt, and where thieves break in through to steal, but layeth up for your treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there will be your heart also." And just the way that those 2 verses really mesh together, it really, really spoke to me when I was reading through this. I can't mention that without mentioning the rest of the parable from the rich fool found in Luke chapter 12, where he had an unbelievable harvest that year. So what did he do? Instead of helping others, he built bigger and bigger barns. He wanted to do everything he can to store it up. He was going to live his life, just have the easiest life, full of the most, just everything that he could, every comfort he could think of. And what happens? He dies. And he dies, and because he put everything he had and all of his belief into his material possessions, he didn't go to heaven. And that's something that it just seems, when you look at this world today, that it seems like nobody has ever read the parable of the rich fool, and they've never even heard it. Because everyone today, it seems like the world is all about hedonism, all about me, all about getting everything that I want, self-pleasure. It's all about everything. Get everything that you possibly can in this life. Because there's so many people that I know that aren't saved. It tells me that you might as well enjoy it now, because there's nothing to look forward to. And that is just the saddest way you could ever live your life. And there's so many people that I talk to that understand that there might be something past this life, as they tell me, but they want their recognition now. They want their reward now. They want everything that they possibly can have now. And when I try to tell them that, we really want to bank stuff up for the afterlife, not for this world, it's so hard to talk to a lot of people. And I have friends, I have families, I have coworkers that I continue to talk to, continue to witness to. And sometimes it feels like you're breaking through, and then sometimes it feels like you take a few steps back. But if you find yourself in that boat as well, just continue to work through it, because hopefully someday something's going to happen, and so they're going to understand exactly exactly what this parable is talking about. In verse 4, James warns about abusing those who are less fortunate than us. He says, "Behold, the hired laborers who have reaped your fields, which is you have kept back by fraud, crieth, and the cries of those who have reaped have entered the ears of the Lord of the Sabbath." People at that time, day laborers, just like today, they needed to be paid every single day. If they weren't paid every single day, a lot of times they didn't eat, and they weren't able to feed their families. And in that time, a lot of the wicked rich were holding back what they were supposed to be paying them. And they were actually, and at that time, they were actually breaking one of the laws in Deuteronomy 24, verse 15. It says, "At that day thou shalt give him his hire, neither shall the sun go down upon it, for he is poor, and setteth his heart upon it. Least cry against thee unto the Lord, and sin unto thee." Every time you hire somebody, you're supposed to pay them before the sun sets. You're supposed to make sure that they have a fair wage, the wage that you promised them. And if not, you were guilty of sin. And a lot of people, and James charges a lot of these abusive rich men with not just neglect and selfishness, but he's accusing them of outright fraud and lying to them. Verse 5, James warns of the rich of living their full life of riches and pleasure. It says, "Ye have lived in pleasure on the earth, and been wanton, and ye have nourished your hearts, and as in for the day of slaughter." He's accusing them of living every day in full comfort, full pleasure, and getting everything that they ever wanted, and actually making themselves, and actually fattening themselves like an animal ready to go to the slaughter. And at that time, they would fatten certain animals and either sacrifice them or eat them. So these people knew exactly what James was talking about. But in today's world, like I said before, this world is run rampant with hedonism. It's all self-pleasure. If it feels good, do it. And it's all about self-love. Whatever feels good to you, do it. You only live one time, according to the world. So you might as well do it. In 2 Timothy chapter 3, it talks about that there's three things that's listed in the start of the end of times. And there's and it's going to tell us that the world has become lovers of their own selves, narcissism, self-love, perverted love. Doesn't matter about anyone else. Whatever you can get, you can get. The second thing it tells us in 2 Timothy, it tells us that in verse 3, it talks about without natural affection. Truce breakers, false accusers, and all despisers of all that is good. Without natural affections, meaning really breaks down to without family. They don't care about family. And if you look at the world today, you look at our country today, we're watching the demise of the family unit. We're watching the demise and the core of this country. The foundation of this country is eroding away. We're watching, there's no more gender distinction. There's no more male and female. Everything. And we're watching families break up. And people caring only about themselves. And I can speak to this personally because parts of my family have broken up because of stupid arguments, of selfishness, of self-love, not wanting to hear anyone else's point of view. My family there's a lot of parts of my family, relationships in my family that have really eroded away because of what's happening. We're also this is a country full of lovers of pleasures of more than God. We love pleasure more than God, and that's exactly what sin is. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, if somebody tells you that sin isn't necessarily pleasurable, that's exactly what sin is. It gives you a temporary pleasure, and it blinds you to what you really need to see. And I can't believe a lot of the stuff that I see, and I can't believe a lot of the stuff that I hear in this country today. Everything that James has talked about in these first 6 verses, I can see today, and I see it everywhere I look, and it's really unfortunate. But James' final warning to these rich come in verse 6, and he talks about, "Ye have condemned and killed the just, and those who not resisted you." He's literally accusing them of murder in this verse. And we see the same thing today. They abuse, the wealthy will abuse the poor just to get what they want. We watch wealthy landowners, we watch the rich. Back in those days, they would drag poor into rigged court systems. We see the same thing today. And the rich have so many more resources than any poor person does that they really can't put up a fight. And there's so many parallels from what James is talking about, and it's still around today. So it just shows you that humanity really doesn't change over time. But when I read that, I actually, when I was reading through these verses, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, I pray every day that the Lord will give me wisdom, and that He'll tell me exactly what I need to say, and I understand that I have to put the work in as well. And so I was reading through other passages, other books of the Bible, just trying to figure out what I was going to do when Pastor asked me to come up here. And I have this overwhelming urge for some reason to go back to the Old Testament. And I told that to a coworker of mine, and he asked me, he said, "What is the point of the Old Testament?" He's like, "We should be studying the New Testament. What's the point of all these stories in the Old Testament?" And the Old Testament is really the foundation of our faith as well. So much of the Old Testament and the New Testament reference each other. And it was funny because when I had the urge to read through 1st and 2nd Kings, I actually came across 1 Kings chapter 21 talks about Naboth's vineyard and how King Ahab really wanted this vineyard owned by Naboth. And Naboth told him, "No, you can't have it. This is my family's vineyard. I'm passing it down. It was passed down to me, and I'm passing it down." And King Ahab wanted it, but he didn't get it. Naboth didn't give it to him, so he went back to his room, and he actually laid in his bed. He wouldn't eat. He was so upset he couldn't have this vineyard, which didn't make sense to me because he's the king. He couldn't just take it, but it is what it is. But his wife Jezebel, she's like, what are you doing? Why are you not eating? What are you doing? Why don't you just take it? Why don't you be a king and just take it? And he didn't, but so she devised a plan in order for two witnesses to say that Naboth, he criticized God, and he criticized the king. And he ended up being found guilty and being stoned because of it. And after that, she got word that he was dead. She went back to the king and said, "There you go. I solved your problem for you. The vineyard is yours. Go take your vineyard." So he did. He went to his vineyard. He was so excited. He was probably walking around eating grapes. I don't know what he was doing, but so excited to have this vineyard. But then he gets a visit from the prophet Elijah. And Elijah tells him, he's just as the dogs lick the blood, Naboth's blood, they'll be licking yours. Which freaked me out when I read it, but turns out that a little while later, King Ahab was killed in battle. And as they were washing out his chariot, the dogs in the street were licking the blood out of his chariot. So, and when I read that, I was able to look at my coworker and say, ha ha, I needed that, so that's why we have the Old Testament, and that's why we could read the Old Testament. But it also brought up an important point, I think, that I really needed to understand too. It's really easy to get upset over a lot of things. It's really easy to get mad at God's timeline versus our timeline. Everything's going to happen when God wants it to happen. Everything's going to, justice is going to come. Everything is going to come in His time. And we can get upset all we want, but King Ahab, King Ahab ended up repenting. He repented a little bit before he died. And God said, look at him, he's repenting. He had torn out his clothes. And he did have some compassion about it before he passed away. So what God did was give him and his family a stay, and his empire, his line didn't end until after he died. Everything that he had, everything that he had crumbled under his son. Now, at the time, you could be, if you were a family member of Naboth, you could be upset with God because you don't see any justice. You don't have the vineyard. King Ahab still lived for a few years after that. You probably didn't see any justice right away. But God's timing is always perfect. God's timing is perfect. Everything that God does is perfect. There will be justice. No matter what happens to you, no matter what happens in your life, there will be justice. God will bring justice down where He needs to, but it's all with His timing, not with ours. And that's something that I thought about when I was reading through that. He's still a loving God. He still cares about us, and He will bring justice when we need Him to bring justice. But, of course, I have way too many notes to go over, and I'm running out of time, but I want to go back to the co-workers that I have, that married couple that I talked about at the beginning. I want to say that because I want to say that it ends happily. Unfortunately, it doesn't. I was just informed by one of them that they are filing for divorce. And they did what they could to save it, but the biggest issue that they had was as they were collecting wealth and working and getting all this money and enjoying everything that they had, it opened them up to a lot of sin. And that's exactly what wealth and money does. And there was a church member I was talking to a while back, and we were talking, and he's like, how's it going? I'm like, good. And he's like, what have you been up to? I'm like, work. He's like, work. And we're all just working all the time. I'm like, I kind of wish sometimes that I had a really rich uncle that I didn't know about that was going to leave me some money so I didn't have to work so much. And he goes, no, you don't want that. And I was like, I I don't think you heard me. Yeah, that's exactly what I want. He's like, no. He's like, getting a lot of money like that's going to come a lot of issues. There's going to be a lot of issues, not just now you're going to have to keep track of all this money and everything that comes with that, but it opens you up to a whole lot more sin and a whole lot more evil that you have never seen before. And it gives you a whole lot of access to it too. And we were able to actually have a discussion where maybe I have a rich uncle that gives me just enough to survive. So I don't walk into the grocery store or the gas station and get mad over the price of beef jerky. And maybe I can buy some now and then. But when I read through these 6 verses in the book of James, what I came away with is, don't be upset at the situation that you're in. Don't be upset that you don't have a lot of wealth. Don't be upset that you are watching wicked people be blessed beyond belief. That was one thing that I really had to struggle with when I first got saved, was because my entire life I've seen people bullied me in school, and they had everything they wanted. One particular bully got the vacation in Hawaii every single year. And it really, I just didn't understand. And finally, I just understood that God blesses everyone different. And it is what it is, and they'll get there. They'll be judged later. But if you ever feel like that, I encourage you to read. Psalm 73. Pastor read that a while back, and it really spoke to me when he did, because it tells of, and really the gist of it is that these people, Asaph wrote this Psalm 73, and I'm not going to go through it, but it's exactly how I felt my entire life, and it really spoke to me when I heard it, and I've been reading it now and then ever since, because it tells exactly how I felt. He talks about how he almost slipped up. He was jealous of how the wicked and how the rich just continued to get wealthy, and their cups seemed to overflow with blessings from God, and how he struggled, how he's seen so many people struggle. And it wasn't until that he went to the synagogue, he went to church, or his version of church, he went to temple, and he understood what was going to happen to them. And I have a hard problem today inviting people to church, because a lot of people tell me, why do I need to go to a church? Why do I have to go somewhere like that? Why can't I? I have a friend who tells me that she feels closer to God when she's out in the woods and out in his creation. That's how she feels close to God. And people are like, if I want that, I can read the Bible. I can watch things online. I can go on YouTube, watch a lot of Billy Graham like I've been doing. Why do I have to go to a church? Because when you have thoughts like this, when you almost slip because you're jealous of what the wicked get, how it seems like God is blessing them, and how you're struggling as a Christian, it is so refreshing to get around other believers. And coming here, we come here when the doors are open, and a lot of people still don't understand why we do as a family. But it's because I get to come, when I come Wednesday, it's right in the middle of the week when I really need to be around other believers. I really need to hear the Word of God. And when I can get around like people, I'm not going to slip. There's no way I can slip. And I talk to other people, and I talk to people that are more fortunate than me in life and people that are less fortunate than me in life. And the people that are happiest are the people that are less fortunate. I talk, people have always looked down at my family because we've always been poor, But when we get together as a family, it is the happiest that any of us has ever been. And we have so many more skills and can do so many more things than those who have money can do. I mean, I am nothing but proud of my extended family because we have plumbers, we have electricians, we have mechanics. We have all these people that can do so many things, and they are just, so many of them are just happy with life, happy living their life. And so many times when I see people running this rat race and trying to get everything that they possibly can in life, their lives fall apart. They file for divorce. Their kids are not doing well at all, and everything that they work hard for falls apart. It's because they're putting everything that they have into material possession, everything that they have into money, and they're not putting anything into Christ. They're not putting anything into God. And if you come away with anything tonight, I hope you just walk away with that. That doesn't matter what your circumstances are. That put your full love and your full heart into Christ. You are going to reap so many more rewards than you're ever going to imagine. Amen. You're going to, people may not understand it today, but we are definitely stocking up our stockpiles in the afterlife. Everything that we're going to get is going to get given to us in heaven. We may not have a lot here, and we might struggle day to day. And like I've said before, there's days where it was really hard for me to make sure the bills were paid and food was on the table, but God has always provided. And I put everything I had, and I needed to read these verses. I needed to read everything that I read to make sure that I still remember and I still understand that God's always going to be there, because I put everything, all faith I have, into him. And I'm so glad that I got saved when I did. Probably should have happened earlier, but everything happens for a reason. But put everything you have into Christ. Put everything that you have, not into material possessions, but into God. You'll never be happier. Thank you.